I just, I just, I just speak my peace, keep my peace.
What's good, y'all? Welcome to the Speak My Peace podcast. As always, I'm your gracious host, Greg Lacey. Like we always do about this time, I hope this episode reaches you on the good health, good wealth, and that you are taking care of yourself and your loved ones. I hope that you are taking care of yourself and your loved ones. I know I run through that intro every episode, and it may seem like just like a spew that it just rolls off my tongue, but it's not. I wholeheartedly mean that. That's the reason why I repeat it 133 episodes in and continue to repeat it, because it's important. You know, we got to take care of ourselves. We got to be the best version of ourselves, or we got to strive to be the best version of ourselves, just so that we can make life a little bit more enjoyable for us and those around us. And your loved ones could be whatever you define your loved ones to be, whether that be siblings, relatives, close friends, spouses, or spouse, children, whatever the case it may be. Whatever you define the loved ones to be, you can't help them, you can't guide them without taking care of yourself first, because you're still got things that need to be addressed, things that need to be fixed, things that need to be healed. You can't offer that to other people that are in need of those, that are in need of that same assistance, or that are in need of guidance, or in need of someone to speak to. Take care of yourself first, so that you can take care of those around you to the best of your ability to help them be the best version of themselves. I spoke last episode about this podcast being niche and me accepting it, me accepting that it's not going to reach everyone, me understanding that the subject matter is not palatable for everyone, and me growing happy and understanding that you all tune into this podcast for a very specific reason, and that what fuels me and keeps me going. With that being said, I know that a lot of the messages and a lot of topics that I talk about on this podcast skew more towards the older demographic. And I understand that because I study and watch my audience. I understand where y'all listening from, as far as countries and cities and states. I understand the age range of my audience. I understand the male and female gender breakdown of my audience. I understand and I study all that stuff. So this podcast come across as a more mature podcast. However, a lot of the messages and a lot of the topics that I cover, I wanted to reach the ears of the younger demographic as well, but I understand that the younger demographic a lot of times are not tuned to a podcast that are speaking on this issue. That's where I lean on y'all. That's where I come to y'all to help me get these messages across. With this being a niche podcast, with this being a more mature podcast, the average 18, 19, 20-year-old is not going to tune into this podcast to listen to this. They're probably going to tune into podcasts that's dealing more with celebrities and dealing with gossip and things like that, because at that age, that's what we are in tune with. However, with the messages I speak on here, the messages I relay, my experiences I detail in this podcast, is mainly detailing it so that it can help someone else that may be going down that same journey. You know, when I was younger, I felt like I didn't have someone that was constantly, telling me about their experiences as they were growing into young adults and they transition into actual adults. I didn't have anyone to tell me, consistently tell me right from wrong and different things. So I did a lot of it was figuring out how to be an adult on my own. So I try my best to detail my experiences in this podcast, because we have young professionals coming up that may be in that same realm, that may be in that same boat, to where they don't have someone speaking those things into them. They don't have someone sharing their experiences, or they just may not relate to the people around them that they will look to get those experiences from. So I use my podcast as that vessel to deliver it to them, to let them know that, you're not the only one that's been through this. I've been through this as well as millions of other people before me have been in the same predicaments that you are in. But knowing that this podcast is not reaching a demographic, I rely on you all heavily to deliver those messages. I hope that what you all hear in this podcast, the things and the testimonies that I give and the experiences that I share, I hope that you are all applying it to your lives as well. I'm not saying that you should live by a certain code of Speak My Peace podcast, but I know I've been through certain things that may be similar to experiences that you've gone through. So I hope that you are able to apply what you are listening to your younger sibling, your younger cousin, the young person in your neighborhood, a young person in your career field that may be needing that guidance, because that's what's most important. To quote Whitney Houston, she said, I believe the children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. And the song in itself is a beautiful song, but that bar in itself is such a powerful bar. We experience at this point in our life, I know I'm speaking to a more mature demographic. At this point in our life, we've experienced a lot of life. We've lived a lot of life. We've made a lot of bad decisions. We made some wrong decisions, but we've experienced a good amount of life up to this point of our lives. And as I said, a lot of us, we figured a lot of stuff out on our own. We figured a lot of stuff out through trial and error. However, we have to be able to pass down those lessons. We have to be able to steer someone in the right direction. We have to be able to steer someone away from making the wrong decision that you made, that you maybe see forthcoming in their future. We have to prepare the next generation to be the greatest version of themselves, so that they can go out into this corporate world or go on into life as young adults and adults with a leg up on the competition. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Teaching them is one thing, but what are you teaching them is what we need to focus on. You can't just be teaching these young kids. You can't be teaching children in general, a bunch of BS and then expecting them to go on into life and be the greatest citizens. Because look at what look at who their teacher was. Look at what they were learning. Look at what the things that came across to them that they, took with them into life. Look where they got it from. Look what was actually being taught to them. We have to focus on that. Not only teaching these children, but teach them well. Teach them that so they can have advantage on their counterparts as they're going into this world. Their YT counterparts, let's say, as they're going into this world. Because 9 times out of 10, their YT counterparts have a leg up on them because their parents are doing these things for them. And I hate to make everything seem like a competition because it's not. But y'all know with this podcast, I'm always bigging up my people. I'm always trying to spread positivity into y'all so that we can continue to better the next generation as well as better ourselves so that we can try to even this playing field as much as possible. We know that, there's a big disparity in the opportunities that are provided for us and the resources that are provided for us in comparison to our YT counterparts. So why continue to contribute to that disparity opposed to trying to help, the next generation get their leg up on their competition or even a playing field for them. So now they're operating in a more or less stressful environment. We have to teach them well. They're going to lead the way because these youngins, they're going to be here longer than we are. Some of us are on the tail end of our lives. Some of us are on the other half of our lives. Maybe never speak that. I don't want to speak about that because that sounds kind of weird speaking about that. But what I'm trying to say is we've experienced so much of our lives to where some of us are close enough to that dream we've been chasing for 30, 40, 50 plus years, to where, once we attain that dream, we're looking towards maintaining that for a certain amount of time and then retiring. Some of y'all are already retired. Some of y'all are already living in that dream that you've been chasing. But we've experienced enough life because life takes a lot out of you on this journey. So why not try to, you can't prevent it from happening, but why not try to cushion the blow for the person that's going to come behind you? We have to continuously wire our minds to think about these things to help better up the next generation so that our people have a better future going forward. I say it all the time. Nobody cares about us but us. So if we're not looking out for ourselves, who's going to look out for us? I come from a generation, I'm pretty sure the generation before me comes from it as well, of people figuring out life on themselves, figuring out life on their own. And it's not easy to do that. It's hard. I'm going to tell you all, myself, as a person who, quote unquote, got it out the mud and still figuring out life largely in part by myself. I've experienced a lot of trial and error growing up as a young adult. And I still experience a lot of trial and error as a not at young adult, but as an adult. We have to be able to guide these children so that they can be the great leaders that we are searching for. Because we're not going to be it. There's going to be generations and generations to come beyond us, and we have to be able to prepare them to be the best version of ourselves. With all that being said, somewhere along the route, Whitney's message got lost. We stopped teaching them, and we stopped preparing them to be leaders. And I don't know exactly what that event was that caused that shift, but we're not doing it. It's not as prevalent. It appears it's not as prevalent today as it once was in the 60s, with the Black Panthers and the 70s and beyond. In today's day and age, we're not doing as great a job as leading these young people. The reason why I say this is because children, especially in hoods, young Black children, they used to be shielded from a lot of things that we see a lot of young Black children getting themselves involved with today. Just because the OGs or the old heads within those hoods realize that this kid has a promising future. This kid can be the next doctor. This kid can be the next lawyer. This kid can be the next hooper. This kid can be the next football player, NFL player, whatever the case it may be. And in order for them to reach that goal, in order to reach that destination, we have to shield them from all this wickedness that's going on around in our environment. And that was like a unwritten law, I feel like, 20, 30 years ago. I'm not sure that same unwritten law still stands today, because we see a lot of today's current old heads mingling with these young kids, getting them involved with those certain things that's going to halt their futures. And it's unfortunate. There used to be a time to where the old heads had this conscious thought or understanding that to make it out this hood is hard enough. There's a reason why I'm still living here 40, 50 years later, is because there weren't many resources provided for me to make it out of here. The lack of resources led to me doing things that may have been illegal. The lack of resources led to me to doing things, to going down certain roads that, quite frankly, I didn't want to go down, but out of survival, I had to go down that road. And so with that understanding came this also understanding of the hood being a whole, understanding that because of the lack of resources, because of the lack of funding, because of the lack of opportunities, we get wallowed into this hole that's so deep that it's almost impossible to climb out of. You may make certain progress within your life, and you start to climb those walls of that hole. And then as you are reaching the horizon, you start to realize that hole is getting further and further away from you. And what that implication of things getting further and further away from you is that, you expect the life to go one way, then you get thrown on a curveball. Life may be going well the first 15 years of your life. Age 16, you get thrown a curveball. That's that wall getting higher. You graduate high school, you may have your eyes set on going to this college. Now you can't afford to go to this college, so now you're trying to do things around your environment to make up the money so that you can go to the college like all your family wants you to do. That's that hole getting higher. So this idiom of this hole getting higher, and this understanding that it's hard enough to make it out of these environments, those old heads and those OGs did whatever they could to shield the young people from getting involved with anything that will halt them from chasing their dreams. And I feel like we've moved away from it. Like, I'm not going to say everyone moved away from it. There may be some neighborhoods out there that are still, living by that code. But I feel like widely, we have moved away from it. A lot of these kids are going down these paths and these roads that are halting their progress into stardom. Last summer, one of the highly touted basketball prospects of the past couple years, named Imani Bates. Let me say this before I even jump into this section of the episode. I'm not sharing any of these stories to talk down on any of these young kids. I'm not sharing any of these stories to shame any of these young kids. I'm really sharing these stories to tie back into that lost art of teaching these children well and letting them lead the way. And that guidance that's missing in these environments, and these kids spiraling as a result. So I don't want the focus of me sharing these things I'm about to share the next 5 or 10 minutes to be a focus on the individual, but rather than the environments around them. So last summer, one of the most highly touted high school basketball prospects in the last couple of years, and you want to know how highly touted he was? At age 15, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. That cover of Sports Illustrated said, Magic, Mike, LeBron, ... and the 15-year-old who's next in line, referring to this kid I'm speaking about, Imani Bates, essentially telling the world that this kid is destined for stardom, this kid is destined for greatness. At the very minimum, this kid is destined to be a Hall of Famer in professional basketball. So this is 15-year-old going back into that pressure that I was speaking about in the LeBron James episode a few episodes ago. That's a lot of pressure being put on this kid. So the kid goes to high school, still a highly touted kid for the next 3 or 4 years, goes into college, and he enrolls at Memphis, plays under Penny Hardaway. Actually, he graduated early and goes to Memphis. So he goes to Memphis, he stepped on campus, I think he's like a 17-year-old. His first year at Memphis didn't go too well, just because of the expectations that was put upon him. You know, everybody was expecting him to be the best kid in the country, expecting him to make a lot of noise, and he just didn't live up to those expectations. A lot of that was because, one, he faced an injury his freshman year that kind of halted that, and two, the team just wasn't as good as everyone expected that team to be. There were a couple of kids on that team that ended up transferring from that school at the end of the year just because it just wasn't what they expected it to be, amongst other reasons. So you have that, you know, that first year. Obviously, you get a lot of criticism because of that, because a lot of people expected him to go to school and be ready for the draft immediately after 1 year. It didn't go that way. Second year comes, he's a better player, but he's still dealing with not living up to the expectation that everybody expected him to be, the greatest person in the world. So at the end of his sophomore year, he ends up transferring to a school back home. He's from, I believe, East Michigan. He transfers to a school back home and decides to go play there for the next 2 years at max. Now, the summer that he leaves the summer that he leaves Memphis and heads back home, before he even stepped foot on the court, because the season hasn't started yet, it's the summer, he gets arrested. He gets pulled over for running a stop sign. The officer stated that he smells weed, so he wanted to pull the kid out the car and search the car for anything. Upon removing the kid from the car, they discovered that he has an illegal firearm and he has an excessive amount of weed. Now, luckily for the kid and luckily for the stardom that I'm speaking about, he's real recognized. So the officer, and y'all know I hate speaking in great light of pigs on this podcast. This is not the place to do that. Y'all do that on y'all platforms. But the pig pulls him out the car, you know, puts him in the back of a squad car, gives the kid his phone, like, hey, you know, we're not supposed to do this, but I'm going to let you have access to your phone until we get to the station because I recognize you. I know you're a good kid, or I know what you're destined to be. He gets on the phone. The first call he makes is his mother. He calls his mom. He's crying. He's bawling. Mom, I got arrested. I'm in the back of a squad car. I got caught with a gun, and I got caught with weed. And he's crying. And honestly, that struck home for me because personally, I've done so many things in my life that I'm not proud of. I've done a lot of things in my life that I'm extremely proud of. But at the end of the day, the one thing that matters the most to me is making sure that I am out here representing my mom to the best of my ability. I would never want to be in a position to where I have to call my mom and I'm crying because I feel like I've failed her expectations of being an upstanding son. Because that's what I identify, those feelings, like him crying as soon as he hears his mom's voice on the phone, is that, damn, I had all these things destined for me and planned for me, yet this could be potentially all thrown away because of a dumb decision. Fast forward, the kid doesn't go to jail. He doesn't spend any time in jail. I believe the charges end up getting dropped. He ends up playing a season at the school that he transferred to. He has a great season too. The school not so well, but him individually, he has a great season. And it took me back into what I'm speaking about in terms of the guidance. How is this kid build the next Magic, the next Mike, the next LeBron? Yeah, he's in an environment to where he's traveling around with a gun. And please forgive my ignorance. I know a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of environments, you have to walk around with a tool. You have to have some type of protection because you just never know when it may be your time to go. I wholeheartedly understand that. I personally don't give into that. I don't choose to travel that way or invest in that certain things because I'm a firm believer in that you invite. I don't try too hard to harp on that term energies and things like that because that is, some people get too into it, and I try my best to stay away from it, but I wholeheartedly believe in that you sometimes invite certain energies when you're doing certain things. So I don't want to invite those type of energies into my life, so I don't travel with a gun. And maybe I'm ignorant for it. Maybe I should be traveling with protection to consider how crazy this world is. But Where was the old heads? Where was the OGs in this situation to where this kid is protected in the city and an environment he lives in, and he don't have to drive around with a gun? Where's the old heads? Where is the OGs in his neighborhood to where folks is telling him that you're well protected. You don't have to worry about protection, but also, stop smoking this weed. And I'm not shaming him for smoking the weed, but that's also what he got called for too, in a excessive amount of weed. But why is no one pouring into him how great he can be? Why is no one constantly reminding him, hey, you were on this magazine at 15 years old, and they got you built to be one of the greatest. We don't need you doing anything to stop you from reaching that mountaintop. If anything, we want to do whatever we can to help catapult you to that mountaintop. And if we can't catapult you to that mountaintop, we want to do whatever we can to push you to that mountaintop, making sure that you're not stopping along the journey, making sure that at the first sign of something, of a roadblock, you're not considering turning around. We want to make sure that you are full steam ahead and going up that mountaintop. Why is there no one in a situation reminding this kid of that? Why is there no one in this situation reaffirming this kid of his greatness? Fast forward to this week, another highly touted prospect, high school prospect, is this kid named Mikey Williams out of San Diego. One of the most well-known high school athletes in the past couple years. You want to know how well-known? This kid is 18 years old. He signed a shoe deal with Puma at 16 or 17. The first kid in the country, first kid in the world to ever sign a shoe deal while still in high school. Athletes, I should say. I don't know about regular individuals, but the first high school athlete to sign a shoe deal while still in high school. Not only that, I'm pretty sure you all know what NIL is and evaluations with NIL. This kid is worth more than $3 million in terms of the brand deals he has. He hasn't stepped foot on a college campus yet. He hasn't stepped foot on a professional court yet. So he has this bright future. He signed to a big shoe company. He has a shoe deal. He's one of the best high school basketball players of his class. He's worth all this money as an 18-year-old. Yet, this past week, he gets arrested on suspicion of 5 felony charges of assault with a firearm. Going back into the start of things, I want to paint this picture of how big this kid is for those of you who are not familiar with this kid. He first came onto the scene 7th or 8th grade. He played on the same AAU team as LeBron James' son. We already spoke about just that type of attention being close to someone as big as LeBron James commands. So you can imagine that type of attention being his son, being named after him, commands. So Bronny James is making his ranks, in middle school through the AAU circuit. Obviously, he's commanding a lot of attention. A lot of people are focusing on him. A lot of cameras is on him throughout his high school career just because of who he's attached to, but also because the kid is actually good. The summer of, I don't remember what summer it was, maybe like 2016, 2017. Everyone finds out that not only is Bronny James really good, there's also this kid on this team who's an 8th grader that is very good, maybe the best kid out of the entire 8th grade class in the world. And that kid is this kid I'm speaking about, Mikey Williams. So the media was going there to look for LeBron James and found a diamond in the rough. Next thing you know, this kid catapults. He's now the most recognizable name and face in terms of the high school basketball circuit because people know where he's destined to be. So then you fast forward a couple of years, and I apologize for the breaks. My throat pause is really messed up, so I really do need this tea. This tea is getting me through this episode. Anyways, going back into just fast forward into these deals and him being worth $3.3 million, him having a shoe deal with a major shoe company. How did it get to the point to where he's now in a situation to where he's being charged of allegedly assaulting people with a firearm? He has 5 felony accounts of this. Where was the guidance? Where was the folks around him preventing him from getting even being in that environment to where, 1, he has to be walking around with a firearm allegedly, and 2, he has to be assaulting people with a firearm allegedly. This kid should be living, and I'm saying this take this with a grain of salt, because I do feel sad for the young kids that don't actually get to grow up because they spend the entire amount of their lives training, and that's what is needed in order to be a professional athlete. I understand that wholeheartedly. But this kid should be sleeping, eating, breathing basketball at this point, because he has his goal set on making it to the NBA. So how is it to the point to where he's getting caught in this type of situation and no one is preventing him from that? Where are the OGs to tell him that this is what you're destined for? You know, you were on a team with LeBron James son, who in itself commands a lot of attention, and you somehow surpassed that attention he commanded, coming in a situation being an unknown kid. You're destined for greatness. You're destined to be one of the greatest. Why is there no one in this corner reaffirming him of what his future holds? Why is there no one in this corner consistently pouring into him how great he is, so that he understands that he don't even need to be in these environments? Jay-Z once said, y'all know I love quoting Jay-Z, ain't nothing fun about carrying your gats, worrying your moms, and burying your best cat. A lot of these kids these days, they are looking up to carrying these personas of this macho man. They're looking up to carrying these ideologies of being of or from the hood, and they don't understand that there's a million people around the world who are trying to get out of their environments that you are portraying that you are from or of. And I don't know where these kids are from. I don't know their backstories or anything like that. But I think when you reach that stage of a stardom, when you are destined to be aligned with LeBron James and Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, I think we have an idea that you're far beyond the hood. Where are the individuals in their corners constantly reminding them that this is only temporarily, and no one here wants to be here? Me personally, I tell people where I'm from, and I constantly tell people where I'm from, because I know the statistics of individuals where I come from, especially young men, especially young black men. So I love to share that, yeah, one of us made it here, and one of us is striving, and there's 100 other of them behind me that I want to surpass me. I want to constantly remind America that y'all put these images out into the world of Compton being this hellhole, and that, you know, we're not destined for anything but failure, but yet one of us cracked that code, and then there's going to be more that's going to crack that code to an even bigger expense. There's this infatuation amongst these young kids of being of those environments, and a lot of them aren't from that, and I will never understand it. They don't understand that people who are in those situations hate those situations, but it's all they know. It's all their mother knew. It's all their grandmother knew. It's all their great-grandparents knew. Their families have been in those situations, whether it's a Watts, whether it's a Harlem, whether it's a 7 Mile Detroit, 8 Mile Detroit, whether it's a Southside Chicago, whether it's a wherever the place you want to name. There's many of those same type of environments all around the world, all throughout this country. And our families have been in those situations for 40 plus, 50 plus years, because they tried their best to remove themselves and remove the generations from them, from their environments, but it just didn't work out how they planned to be. They got set back. Maybe they got a house loan they got to continue to pay on. Maybe the job that they are paying for, they had to work 30 plus years in order to retire, and things just didn't work out. There's so many unique cases in everyone's situation, but a lot of times our people and our family are stuck in those situations not because they want to be, but because they worked their entire lives to try to get out of that situation. And by the time they're finally, seeing that rim that I was speaking about, getting out that hole, by the time they finally see that horizon, that's almost the end of their life. So they don't actually get to see that horizon or actually get to embellish in that horizon, but they got to reach it. And next thing you know, the end of their life is coming. We have to continue to teach these young kids. We have to continue to remind these young kids that the hood is always going to be there. The goal is to improve our current situation so that we can make it better for those of us behind us. We have to constantly remind these kids that ain't nothing fun about worrying your dad and worrying your moms, like Jay-Z said. There's nothing fun about portraying to be somebody and your mom is constantly sitting up there worrying about whether or not you're putting yourself in harm's way and driving herself crazy because you're even crazier than what she's driving herself because you're portraying to be something that you're not. Young kids, if you have a dream, you have a goal, please, 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 please focus on that. All this other stuff in life, it does not matter. Portraying to be hard, portraying to be a gangster, walking around with guns and portraying to be somebody you're not is not worth it. You're bringing more dark energy into life than positive energy. Older folks, if you see somebody in your family, see somebody in your neighborhood, you see somebody in your environment that is going down that wrong road, we have to steer them right. Because a lot of us, and I'm not going to say me because I didn't, but a lot of y'all have made those wrong decisions. And I'm pretty sure 10 times out of 10, 11 times out of 10, you would go back and reverse those decisions if you could. And so if you could go back and change those decisions, why not help others individual you see going down that same road? It's important that we steer them in the right direction so that they have the leg up on their competition, so that they can create better environments for themselves and their children and their grandchildren. And if possible, they can do it to the extent of these professional athletes and professional entertainers to the people that are still living and are around them. We have to constantly remind them that they are the future and they're going to be leaders of our future for many years to come. One thing that is not spoken about enough is, especially I think in black environment, black families, is that transition to being an adult. And I think that's where the message, Whitney Houston's message got lost, is when I was growing up, when I was a young adult and transitioned from being a teenager to a young adult and now being an adult, I didn't have someone constantly walking me through that transition. And a lot of that is because some of us, we are growing up with our family members. So like, I don't feel like I had a cousin that I was looking up to when I was portraying my life after. I had cousins that I knew I didn't want to be like. And while I was younger and hoping that I had somebody that I can, portray my life after or tailor my life after or tailor my life towards, by the time that I finally was thinking that, okay, I can use someone that can guide me through this or guide me through life, I was in their position. So then I was young adult. So now, as I'm a young adult, I didn't get time to be able to be prepared for it. So now I'm learning things through trial and error. And as I'm learning things through trial and error, I'm still growing older. So next thing you know, I'm a 30-year-old adult. I'm looking back, I'm like, damn, I didn't have guidance. I was just figuring things out. Well, how can I make sure that somebody else does not go through this? The best way to do that is provide that guidance, y'all. One thing I will say before we get out of here, this younger generation, these younger kids, they don't take being bossed around well. So as you are listening to this episode and you're applying what I'm talking to you all about, tailor your speech to the individual that you're speaking to. If the individual you're speaking to does not take being bossed around well, come to them with a softer approach. If the individual you're speaking to doesn't really listen to, being talked to soft, and I'm not saying going at them and yelling, but be a little more aggressive, be more assertive in what you're speaking to them about and telling them the wrongs and the rights and the path that they're going down. Tailor your speech to the individual you're speaking to, because if you don't, then you're just wasting your breath on what you're speaking about. I really don't have anything else to say this week, man. As always, I appreciate y'all listening to the Speak on Peace podcast. As we get out of here, my what to watch for this week, it's the finale. I know it released last night, but some of y'all ain't watched it yet. Snowfall series finale is my what to watch for this week. Snowfall series finale. It's the end of an era, y'all. That's the Speak My Peace podcast for this week. I'm out.